right, cool. We will call this meeting to order then. We will start then. Zoom meeting information. I think that's all covered. We'll move into item B, roll call. Chair Seth, I am here. Vice Chair Ned.
Present.
Alder Scannell is excused. Cory.
Present.
John.
Present.
Deb.
Present.
Julia.
Present.
Cody.
Present.
Welcome, Cody. And Marc.
Present.
All right. We will move on then. Can I move on?
Yes, you may.
Cool. We'll move on then to approval of the minutes from March 11th, 2020, from 10,000 years ago. So is there a motion to approve the minutes from March 11th?
Move to approve.
Motion
Second.
by Ned and second by Marc. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. All right, cool. Motion passes. All right. And then we'll move on to approval of the agenda for 2020. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? So moved by John. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Marc. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Cool. Agenda approved. All right. So we've got a number of updates here for our May meeting. First off, I want to welcome Heather Allen from Renew Wisconsin. I've been hyping the Clean Energy Toolkit for a long time. I think some of you got hard copies back in March before at our last meeting. But I want to welcome her, who's the executive director of Renew, and did tons and tons of great work on this really awesome resource about how local governments like ourselves can use more clean energy. And yeah, I guess I'll let you take it away, Heather.
Thank you, Seth, and it's nice to meet everyone via Zoom. Thanks for having me here. I will go ahead and try to share my screen and see what you think of that.
And Heather, just give us your address too. You can use your work address if you like.
Oh, sure. Yes, my name is Heather Allen. I'm the interim executive director of Renew Wisconsin. We are located at 214 North Hamilton Street, Suite 300, Madison, Wisconsin 53703. Okay. See my screen okay?
Yes. Yes, we can see the, oh, sorry, we can see the screen. Yes, thank you, Heather. We can see it.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm excited to be here because, as Seth said, we worked in partnership with Wisconsin Conservation Voters and Sierra Club to really put together all the resources that we could think of that would be relevant for local governments pursuing renewable energy. And so we're excited copies of the toolkit, and I want to explain a little bit about it, some interesting anecdotes of other communities that have advanced their renewable energy efforts and demonstrate that it's doable and it's feasible. And even in these difficult economic times, it can be a really great investment, or maybe especially in these times. Just by way of background, I should give you a little information about me. Before I came to Renew Wisconsin, I actually worked for the City of Madison Common Council for 6 years, doing research and policy analysis. And a lot of that policy analysis was actually about fiscal budgets and capital expenditures and ways to maneuver the operating budget. So I know the constraints of running a local government, the financial constraints. And so I'm very sensitive to everything you all have to juggle, but I'm still excited that this is this can be a wonderful tool actually to reduce your operating expenses over time and help put the city in a better fiscal position. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and dive in. So here's our team. This is, we're a small but mighty nonprofit based in Madison. We've been around since 1991, and we work on all types of renewable energy. In the last couple of years, we added work on electric vehicles and battery storage, because those are two emerging areas. Really involved in every major renewable energy issue since the 90s in the state of Wisconsin. We're really excited because, as you know, leadership today comes from local government issues, but especially on sustainability and clean energy. You may all be familiar with the 25 by 25 goal that was a resolution that over 147 communities in Wisconsin committed to 25% clean energy by 2025. And so there's an appetite out there to do that. Going even further, a number of communities have committed to 100% renewable energy. And I have Green Bay here on the list. I know that you haven't passed a resolution, but by incorporating the goal of 100% renewable into your planning documents, that's a significant achievement, and I just wanted to recognize that. You can see different cities celebrating the launch of the toolkit here. I think everyone has seen this, just to kind of give you the front cover there. So why are cities and counties and other local governments considering clean energy? One great reason is jobs. Clean energy jobs are local, good paying jobs that are family sustaining. And the more we can invest in those types of jobs in our communities, the more robust the community is overall financially. You can, as I mentioned, you can reduce operating expenditures and expenses for residents as well. It's especially important for residents who may have trouble, meeting their energy costs. A lot of communities are really interested in reducing the health burden of air pollution caused by electric generation and even transportation. And many communities find that their residents want this, their leaders want this, and employers who might be looking about where to locate themselves want in clean renewable energy. And then I'll just dive into how do you do it? Really broad picture. It's what you're already doing by creating the sustainability committee, but creating opportunities for community engagement, doing your deep planning, working for on-site renewables on your own properties, but also all the opportunities to access off-site renewables. And much of that work will be done with allies and through partnerships. And of course, the most important for anyone making decisions about a city budget, financing. And we'll touch on that at the very end, but extensive resources on financing. So just wanted to highlight here that before the coronavirus, these numbers are all pre-coronavirus, the end of last year, there were 76,000 clean energy jobs in Wisconsin. The majority of those jobs are actually energy efficiency jobs like weatherization and things like that. But there's a growing market share in solar installers, wind mechanics, and even now storage and advanced transportation. So these are great jobs that we want to grow in Wisconsin, and we want to grow in your communities to support local residents. These are actual renewable energy installers, Mike, Lamont, Tyler, and April, and they're here in Wisconsin. I know you're actually going to hear from Jesse from Eland Electric later, and he's one of our favorite installers. This is a great way to promote the economy locally. Oh, a cloud passed over, so I think you can see me a little better now, which is good. Not great for my solar panels. Okay, so why now? Why are folks investing in renewable energy? And it's it's primarily the economics. In the last 10 years, wind and solar costs have dropped precipitously. Wind came down by 69% and solar came to 8%. The advances in solar and the reductions in costs are primarily related to improvements in technology, making panels more efficient, and then scaling up of production of solar panels. They can be produced much more economically because they're being produced in such great volumes. And that is great news because putting solar on your home today is significantly cheaper. It's just dramatically cheaper and a much more lucrative investment than it was 10 years ago even. I don't think I need to focus on this for the Sustainability Committee, but just a reminder, when you're looking at any type of energy usage, they all have impacts, health impacts, but they have varying levels of impacts. So this is a great analysis from Healthcare Without Harm, which examines risks, occupational health risks for the workers involved in the production, transmission, and distribution of the energy, and the climate risks of every type of major energy source. And you'll see the green items on the bottom of this slide. Solar and wind and geothermal are the cleanest sources of energy from really any public health perspective. And so we're all concerned about our health and our safety, our children's health and safety, and investing in renewables reduces the exposure that they have to all the pollutants that come from fossil fuel production. So it's just a reminder why we all do this. One of the reasons. And as you see that, the prices are coming down, there's clear health benefits, there's job benefits, and there's people are interested in it, customers are interested in it. We see now that corporations are extremely interested in it. So this is just a selection of Wisconsin corporations that have ties to Wisconsin or have operations in Wisconsin who have made renewable energy commitments. These are all very recognizable names and logos. Many corporations you do business with have made a renewable energy commitment. So when the local government makes a renewable energy commitment, you can know you are not an outlier. You are among friends and very powerful partners who are making these same investments. So let's dive into how to do it. Seth may recognize one of the people in this photo. On the left is Kate Beaton. She's a Wisconsin Conservation Voters organizer, and she's also on the City Council of Eau Claire. And she has done work in Eau Claire in her roles, doing a survey of how the community felt about a clean energy commitment and building up the knowledge and the engagement in the community to really help that plan. And Eau Claire has done really well. And the other picture here you'll see is from the task force the city of Milwaukee and the county of Milwaukee created to create a climate and equity jobs task force. And they're doing great work. And it's important to have these grassroots efforts. And you've really done that in Green Bay, and I'll be interested to hear more about how people are engaging with your work. But community engagement, community buy-in, and community awareness is really important to make the effort successful. So really high level, I'm not going to focus too hard on this, but when you're planning your clean energy projects, you need to establish a baseline. I know you're working on benchmarking at this point, which is great. So you'll want to inventory all the facilities and the vehicles, collect all the data, and analyze those energy trends so that you can create a tailored action plan for your community, because every community is different. And you'll want to make sure that you're measuring and tracking progress along the way. That's the best way to hold your own selves accountable that the work is getting done, and to make the case to the public, as you'll need to do regularly. And something to think about while you're doing this work is that planning for equity at the beginning of the process and throughout the process is actually essential. And the reason it's essential is because it seems like equity should just naturally happen. If we're improving the air quality and we're reducing energy costs for our community, shouldn't everyone benefit, and won't they benefit equally? Well, unfortunately, the truth is, if you are not consciously planning for equitable solutions, you can very easily and oftentimes incidentally create worse disparities through the process. So we see this happen in a variety of sectors. There's just sometimes there's a bias that we don't realize that goes into proposals and planning, or there's even a computer algorithm that ends up just disadvantaging a certain group of people. And so as long as you're asking the question at every stage, how does this affect our most vulnerable populations? How does this affect people of color? How does it affect low-income residents or particularly vulnerable groups who have sensitivity to air quality? As long as you keep those questions in mind and keep those at the forefront when you're making decisions, you'll be able to prevent any negative unintended consequences that can actually worsen disparities. And there's more detail in our report about that. A lot of these highlights are actually from the NAACP climate efforts, and those are very, very informative. And we're seeing some communities actually investing in putting solar on affordable housing properties to help reduce the costs, the monthly costs for those residents, or for the housing authority if the housing authority is paying for those electric bills. So all the way up north in Sawyer County, there have been really strong investments in renewable energy on their affordable housing projects. And another tricky spot is multifamily buildings, just due to how multifamily buildings are metered. In many cases, solar has been tricky to make that work financially, but we have a couple of developers. There's one here in Madison, T-Wall Enterprises, that has found some really great ways to get solar on their properties. And now that's a selling point, and they're able to attract residents who want to have a green building, who maybe even want to plug in their electric car in the basement and charge it with solar energy. So those elements of bringing renewable energy to residents who may not be able to access it because they're in a multifamily or they're low income, or for whatever reason they just can't put it on their property, you can look at these solutions. And I would also mention here shared solar and community solar gardens. Those are larger tracts of solar panels that where the units of the electricity produced by those projects can be sold to residents, and they know that panel is producing power directly for them, which is another great solution. Okay, so I did hit on some solutions there, but the other big picture action steps are energy efficiency. I know you're working on that, which is great. And then solar and geothermal can be solutions you can actually put on city properties directly. You can help your community get more renewable energy in its mix simply by reducing the soft costs for going solar. So the easier it is for a solar contractor and a homeowner or a business to get through the permitting inspection process for installing a solar project, the more solar you will have in your energy mix. So it's always good for communities to take a look at those processes and make sure they're as smooth as possible. We are finding with COVID-19 that a number of communities have considered shifting to online and remote inspections so that inspectors don't actually have to come out to the job site to get things done, and to sort of smooth the process so that there's less person-to-person exposure, but you're still allowing these important construction projects to go through. I mentioned solar group buys just a moment ago, but those projects can be very effective in helping more and more people in your community go solar. Oh, I'm sorry, I mentioned community or shared solar. So a solar group buy is when you have a couple of installers or one installer who is working with the community to sign up a number of people and therefore reduce the total cost for each solar installation. And this is sort of like a group purchase process. And solar group buys have been very effective around the state. I think there have been a couple in your area as well. And then we go to offsite renewables. And this is the area where I think things are a little bit trickier. There's a variety of types of partnerships and opportunities to buy renewable energy or to facilitate the development of new renewable energy. And that can include renewable energy credits, renewable energy riders or green tariffs, partnerships with your utility, and as I mentioned, community solar. I'll go into a few more of those in a few slides. And then electric vehicles and transportation infrastructure is another great way to shift your energy usage away from fossil fuels. Here in Madison, the bus barn just had a big solar installation put on, and the goal is to shift to more and more electric buses and then just power those buses with the sun. Electric buses are more expensive, so sometimes you have to find grants and other solutions to be able to purchase those. But over time, they're more affordable because they reduce the fuel costs significantly. Okay, I want to pause there for any questions if folks want to jump in.
I'd be happy to have you answer this at a different time, though, if it's not the right time. But I am curious, and Seth and I have talked about a little bit too. We did pass a commitment in Green Bay over a year ago for 100% clean energy by 2050. So I'm just curious why is that different than what other communities have done? Like what other steps, I guess, are we looking for from Green Bay to be included as a community that passed a resolution?
Oh, I think you could consider yourself as having done that, if you like, that you've made the commitment. You can make the commitment in any form that you like. If you'd like to get more maybe public awareness of it or put it into the format that some other communities have, you could write a resolution and have the full city council adopt that and then just make it a formal city resolution. But I don't think that that's essential or all that important as long as the work is going on and the city staff and elected officials and the residents all understand that you've made that commitment. Does that address your question?
I guess so, in a way. The city council approved the commitment, but yeah, I guess I'm not sure what the difference would be between what we sent to the council and what a resolution, how that would be different than what we already sent. And maybe Seth has a better idea to answer that. I'm not sure.
Sure.
Maybe not.
I mean, I think if we were to go back, we should have done a resolution. I think it would have been better to get more like external awareness. But I think our work plan, which is more of a working document, kind of achieved the same things in terms of like making that commitment and making that goal. So really like apples and oranges, I guess, or it's two different paths to kind of the same ends. I think that a resolution would be useful if we were in a situation where we didn't have like good leadership, like at the city level, like if we weren't able to make any more progress on this goal, and we were to have like a new or a different council that wasn't supportive, I think a resolution would be good in the long term for institutionalizing that goal. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like the next steps that we're going to accomplish, I don't necessarily think that we would need to have a resolution at this point, but that's just my thoughts.
So perhaps we've got some time, but not all the same people in the room are always going to be the same people in the room. So if a resolution gives our commitment more teeth, it's something we would want to revisit as a commission. Kind of.
That's how I would look at it. Yep. It gives you that historical record that the city has formally committed in a way that's really recognizable to all the other city agencies and city partners. That's what the resolution does for you. But I don't think it's necessary to continue your work. You can always just, once you get a plan, you can have a resolution to adopt the plan and reference your previous commitment, and then it's in a resolution form.
Okay.
I think that would be what we should do. I would like to see a more detailed plan for how to meet some of these goals we've outlined, and then a resolution to adopt the plan.
Yeah.
City of Eau Claire had a renewable energy action plan. Dane County has a really thorough one. So we should connect offline about how to move forward on that.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great. But I think you guys are doing wonderful work. So I just thought I'd mention a few really interesting examples. The picture you see here is a solar farm in development. Just the posts have been put in the ground. This picture was taken in this winter of a 9 megawatt renewable energy rider project with Dane County and MG&E. This is located at the Dane County Airport. And it was just formally approved by the Public Service Commission, I want to say last week, actually. And Dane County will save $137,000 in the first year. They have a contract. They're basically buying the power from this solar project at 5.8 cents per kilowatt hour for 30 years with an annual increase. And they signed a contract to buy that power, but it will cost them no money up front. And it's a significant cost reduction from what they would have spent on electricity at their normal rates. So that's an interesting project. And then that is their particular, that's the MG&E Renewable Energy Rider project. Utilities have their own, each utility has their own can come up with their own renewable energy rider project formula. So their formulas will be different between utilities, but this is a really creative solution where you can work with your utility to generate a new renewable energy project and to prompt the buyer for that electricity and hopefully reduce your electricity costs. And in some cases have to put no money up front. So that's just a great example of how all the pieces can fit together. River Falls, I don't know if folks have been watching River Falls, but it's a very small community and they have done wonderful things. I think they're between Eau Claire and Minneapolis. And just this January, they flipped their switch to 100% renewable power for all city buildings. And they did that through a purchase of green blocks from their utility, which is the River Falls Municipal Utility. This came after years of working with the municipal utility and with their parent coalition, Wisconsin, WPPI, where they advocated for more wind, solar, and biogas in the energy mix and more opportunities to buy that wind, solar, and biogas. So they actually they are paying a little extra for each green block, but they decided to do that. And now all the city buildings are powered with green electricity. And they are one of the first city-owned community solar gardens on a city property. I just put a little snapshot here. This is the power they've produced, the carbon they've offset, and the money they saved just in the last 3 days. They have a tracker on their website that shows what that community solar project is doing for the community every day, and you can how much energy it's producing. So they've done a number of other things as well. River Falls is really on the cutting edge. And so I think that should show that communities of any size can do this work. And there's just a bunch of different opportunities different tools to determine like what works best for your community. Also Beaver Dam, it's a place we like to mention as well. They've done a number of solar installations, and just recently they signed an agreement with Blue Stem Energy to install another 2.1 megawatts of solar. And in their case, they will save $2 million in electricity costs over 30 years with no upfront costs once again. They have annual energy expenditures of $800,000 a year. And these new solar additions will be in addition to previous projects where they put solar on the municipal building and the police building. Those were financed in a completely different way through partnerships with a solar cooperative and with grants. So you can see that even in one city, they're buying solar using a different combination of financing than even their other projects. So there's all these innovative financing structures and solutions to use. Okay, so let's talk financing. There are federal resources, there are state resources, and then there's, as I mentioned, a number of opportunities to sort of put the financing package together for something in a creative way. So the Wisconsin I'll just highlight some of these. The Wisconsin Office of Energy Innovation has a number of programs, including METAP, which helps municipalities reduce their energy expenditures and come up with technical solutions. They have grants and technical resources for that. Energy Independent Communities Program, which is works with those 147 communities around Wisconsin that have done this work, have a number of technical resources there. There are energy innovation grants, and there's actually going to be a new round of grant funding for the energy innovation grants. I think it's going to be on the order of $5 million of new money available for grants. I think it'll be announced late summer, early fall. But there are these funding cycles that Wisconsin puts together through different ways that you can access and take advantage of to do projects like this. And of course, focus on energy, which not only has grants for renewable projects, deals, but also grants for energy efficiency planning and design. And those are things that you may want to take advantage of too. And so direct buy is the simplest one. Of course, if you have money sitting in your budgets that you want to spend on solar, and you can just buy it directly. In some cases, that is the most affordable strategy. It's certainly the simplest, certainly the simplest, and that's nice. And then you just own the solar panels outright, and you would have reduced energy costs going forward. And it depends on the size of the project, the energy use, and the amount of energy savings, and the amount of the costs that you pay for electricity for a certain building for certain usage. But I think really rough ballpark, in many cases, a municipally owned project that cannot take advantage of the tax credits can see a rate of a break-even point at 10 to 11 years on a solar project. And in that case, it's good to know that solar panels are warranted for 25 years, can often last up to 30 years or longer. So once you reach that break-even point, and beforehand, your energy costs are dramatically reduced. So your operating budget is reduced. So if you can simply put the project into the capital budget, you can reduce your operating budget for 30 years, which is great. Group buys I mentioned earlier. So PACE financing, that's a financing program to attach a renewable energy or energy efficiency loan to the project. That can help reduce costs. That's really more for commercial projects, but if the more commercial projects you get in your community, the more electricity your community is going to be using that's renewable energy. And let me just pull something up, highlight on the board of, there we go. So the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands, it's actually Wisconsin's oldest state agency, is to manage the forests, to finance public schools and projects for the benefit of all citizens. And the state treasurer, Sarah Godleski, is working to make sure that communities are aware. This is an opportunity to get loans for renewable energy projects and similar projects and energy efficiency projects. And there's no fees attached to loans. And there are hundreds of millions of dollars available that very few people know about, but we wanted to make sure people were aware of it through our local government toolkit work. And so I would just encourage you to check that out. One last point is green bonds. I like green bonds a lot. They're a growing market of the muni bond sector and actually of the corporate bond sector. Green bonds don't necessarily give you like better bond like interest rates for your bonds, but what they do give you is access to new markets. People who are interested in buying green bonds for sustainable bonds, that's a whole new tranche of customers, and that market is continuing to grow. The nice thing about if you decided to do a green bond is that your sustainability folks and your facilities folks would be working intimately with your financing department to do something like that. And it actually helps build, it can build a synergy so that your financing facilities and sustainability people can continue to work more and more on these types of projects. So it would be really comparable to bonding for a project, but green bonds are a new instrument that are worth checking out. Okay, I'm going to pause there and see if you have questions. Any more questions?
Heather, I have another question about, this one's about offsetting our use. And we know, and we've talked about this too, obviously with solar and wind, those are great ways to offset the electrical use. What would you say geothermal is kind of the big way to offset gas, natural gas, things like that?
Yeah. And I didn't go into it here, but electrifying your buildings, including heating and cooling, and shifting to geothermal to do heat pumps or things like that. That is an important and growing sector of ways to reduce your reliance on fossil fuels. But I think there's more work to be done to figure out the best ways to do that in Wisconsin. You can certainly do geothermal projects for specific buildings. And there's been communities in like Canada that are doing brand new developments all attached to a certain geothermal loop to heat and cool the buildings. But we have a little bit of a ways to go to make everything turnkey ready on that. You may have to do like a little more legwork to get those types of projects going. Not the single geothermal, that's easy to do. You can contract geothermal for a single building, but to transition your heating system to electric and complement it with geothermal, that's important, and that's the next step.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, thanks for coming. This is great.
Good.
As far as equity, you said that it's really good, important to plan ahead on these things as you follow through. How does a city buying materials that are equitable before they arrive at the city, meaning the production, the mining of the materials to make the solar panels, how the land is used, how people are used, as far as mining and child labor, all kinds of issues before the metal even gets to the production company where the solar panels are made. Are there things that we can look at to pick out solid companies that pay attention to these kinds of things, that are true to the equitable, model in renewable energy, or however you want to say it?
I am not an expert on sourcing renewable supplies in a sustainable fashion, but I can look into that for you. I think that's a great question. I know that there are a few companies that are make solar panels here in the United States. So if you're interested in Buy American, that's fairly easy to do. In some cases, it's a slight increase in cost to do that. Benefits to that as well, that you'd have much less likely to have supply chain disruption, like we're seeing from some of the panels coming out of China. But on the question of sourcing for the materials that make a solar panel and whether or not that's, fair labor or not child labor and environmental standards, I am going to do some research on that and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I also have another part to that. So once the panels arrive, once they get to our city and we use them, and then we use them up, how is the city responsible for recycling, or how does that, what are some ideas that other cities are using to model good stewardship and equity that way?
So the industry, the recycling industry for solar panels is sort of at its nascent. There is a new solar panel recycling facility that is being built in France. And I have heard more and more anecdotally that United States companies are identifying ways to it's possible to recycle solar panels, but the question is, do we have the facilities to do the work to recycle the panels? And I believe, I don't know if Jesse's on the call yet, but I think First Solar is actually starting to recycle their own panels and promise to recycle their own panels, but that's something you can look for in the manufacturer if they are willing to take back panels at the end of their life cycle and recycle them.
Okay.
And that's an area that we at Renew want to learn more about as well. But to be honest with you, it's a new and growing industry, like how best to recycle panels and to do it, economically and at a larger scale, because there's a lot more panels coming to market. And in 30 years, we will probably have a glut of panels that do need to be recycled, but the infrastructure is not yet there to do it on a map. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And Deb, just so you know, since Jesse and Eland Electric presented on the solar panel project in Green Bay, I did take a look through resources, and what Heather says is correct right now, that there are really solar panels are not recycling industry for solar panels. Part of it is the fact that many of the materials that go into solar panels are fairly common and cheap. There's a lot of silica in there, basically sand, making up some of the glass that's in there. And so some of the components are very inexpensive and they're heavy. So recycling is not something that's particularly economical to do at this point. Sometimes, that's the reality of what drives recycling. But hopefully it is building, and that we'll have some domestic opportunities rather than just old solar panels to France.
Oh yeah, I don't think that's feasible.
That's not going to work. No.
But it's proof that it can be done, that such a recycling facility could be done. So First Solar is the company I mentioned, and they are offering recycling of their panels. So that's something you could do if you were contracting a project. You could say, we want First Solar panels, and we want them to take these off our hands when they've met their useful life. Yes. But thank you for that question.
Cool. Any other questions or comments for Heather? All right, hearing none. Thank you so much, Heather, today. Really appreciate you zooming in. Definitely a lot easier than driving up from Madison. And we'll let you know if we have any questions, but thanks again.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Seth, and thank Committee for all your work. I'm excited to see what you do next, and let us know if we can be helpful. We're happy to help. So I think I'll log off and sign off so that you don't have me cluttering up your screens.
Thank you, Heather, so much. We really appreciated your presentation. It was excellent. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, if you just bear with me, I'm going to make Julia Nordyke a co-host. So when it comes time to talk about tree cover, she can share some documents with you. Okay, so Julia is now the co-host. Hold on one second. All righty, we are on to the next item. Seth, go ahead.
All right, wonderful. Item 2 of informational here, updates from commission members and work groups. Any updates?
I just have a little shorty here. The neighborhood letter that we all worked on, Will Peters is taking a look at it, and hopefully it'll go out by summer.
Cool.
So,
Seth, I have an update. I have a student lined up to work or help work on the climate action plan that we discussed for the Clean Energy Working Group. But we will still require some more information. And as we heard today, clean energy, one of the things that with establishment is we will need all of the vehicle information from the city, as well as some other energy bills that we don't have or weren't given to us originally. So my question goes really to Celestine is who we work with to get vehicle information as well as some of the outstanding electrical bills.
John, let's see. So vehicle information, meaning you want information about the fleet? I mean, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 departments, 5, 6, 7. Every I mean, that's a lot of vehicle. Tell me a little bit more about what you'd like. Maybe you and I could talk offline.
I think that would probably be the best approach.
Okay. All right. So let's, I will send you an email and then you and I can just chat a little bit about that. And then the other piece, the rest of the energy usage?
Yes. Things that we were missing, those included street lighting, traffic signals, park structures, just for examples.
Okay, so street lighting, some of that is actually WPS, not the city. But let's just talk about all of that, and the park structures, that's interesting. Okay, let's talk about all of that when you and I set up our meeting.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you, John. Any other updates from members on any activities?
Just one kind of an update. We have our food waste drop-off site that Brown County hosts at our recycling facility. It's been closed up until we closed it when COVID thing all started up. We did reopen it a couple weeks ago, but beyond that, and I'm still trying to work out the details of getting site opened up at UWGB. That's more complicated than one would think, since everybody is willing to do it, but one, and that's the one that has to give his okay. Today I had a meeting with a woman who's developing an application, has been developing an application for us and for a couple of other communities around the state on basically a phone app or a mobile app that you can use to determine in your community what should or should not go into a recycling bin, or in our case, she's actually doing it for our food waste drop-off program. If you want to see what it looks like, and I would encourage you to do it, for those of you especially who are part of the program, you can go to a website called BetterBin, BetterBin.app. It's an app. It's an online app, and choose Brown County, and you can put in whatever you want to know about food waste, and it will tell you what's appropriate for our program. It's just a way of getting people a little bit more involved and getting a little bit more information out there. The eventual goal, though, is to develop this app and use it for recycling in the Tri-County area that we cover, so that you can plug in any piece of any product by name or by UPC code, and it will tell you whether or not it's accepted curbside in our 3 counties. And we just did a recent analysis and found out that actually we cover about 800,000 people now for the Tri-County goes way beyond its 3 county borders and now covers like 800,000 people in 7 counties. So we've grown a lot. And our business is booming right now, I'll tell you that. Everybody's at home recycling, and I thank you all very much, other than the fact that our if I could share my screen with you right now, I could show you a picture of our recycling building that is full to the gills. But anyway, try out the Better Bin app if you can and get comments back to me. We really want to get this pushed out to everybody in the program, and as we expand, we hope that it'll help people with better decision-making processes as we go forward.
Can you
Marc, sorry. I was going to ask Marc if you want, so that's available now. Should I put it on our Facebook?
Yeah, we're going to push it out via our Facebook page. We'll do a release. We'll send information directly to all of our participants. We've got emails for everybody who's participating. We have like 250 households right now. We're on a food waste program drop-off email list. So yeah, go for it.
Are you going to send it to us then when that happens, please?
You mean the Sustainability Commission, or you personally?
Yes, the Sustainability Commission.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's ready to go. We took a look at it today, went through some of the, there's a few things that are still, until it gets used, you don't necessarily see what's working properly and what's not. But yeah, I can send it out to everybody here. I'll send it to, basically I'll funnel stuff through either Celestine or Seth, and then it should go out to everybody else.
Cool. Thank you, Marc. I got it pulled up right now on my desktop, and it looks really cool. Great. Other updates from folks?
I'll drop in a pollinator corridor kind of update. We talked at our last Sustainability Commission meeting about a couple things regarding Bee City, and that was approved by council for the group to do some fundraising. But then we've also kind of talked about that idea of a no-mow May, which obviously we're halfway through May now, and it's really fine because our ordinance kind of allows for those low-growing flowers anyway. But Steve Grenier and I spoke in the beginning of April, and he is not such a big fan of the idea of a no-mow May, but he kind of countered with the idea that the Department of Public Works would be willing to help us identify some land, and I don't know how much staff time he'd be willing to share, and especially now with things getting as difficult as they are, but that they'd be interested in looking at some land that we could continue to convert from unused lawn space into habitat. So I thought that was really good. I thought that was, it's actually kind of a more systematic approach. So I'm interested to see where that goes.
Awesome. Thank you, Ned. In solidarity, I have not mowed my lawn yet in May. So I'm doing no mow May here on Law Street. Other updates from folks? All right, hearing none, we will move on to item 3. Do we have, I guess, Celestine, are you going to be giving the update on Eland? Or is Jesse, it doesn't look like Jesse is on.
Actually, Cory could do a better update than I.
Okay, great. Cory, take it away.
Sure. So work on the solar arrays started this week, Monday, and I'm told by Jesse that it should be completed about mid next week. So that's great. I don't know if I had shared with you, the city did decide not to install the EV charger that was recommended, and basically because of concerns that there might be, charges stemming from the use of that we weren't quite sure how that would be covered. So, but yeah, the project should be completed next week. So that's great, I think. And then I'm not quite sure what the status is. I do know as far as for the fire stations, I'm not sure when that work is planned to begin.
Yeah, so I'll take that one. So actually, just as we were beginning our conversations, we were hit with a pandemic. So it's, and the fire department is very, very busy right now, obviously. So as soon as there is some time and space, which I anticipate, shortly, we can begin those conversations about the 2 fire stations that Jesse identified for solar.
Wonderful. Great, thank you. And then moving on to item 4, an update from me. I really don't have a whole lot to update. It's really good to see everybody and hear everybody here today. I hope you're all doing well and taking care. If there's one thing I've really excelled at since we last met is being on Zoom all the time, every day, all day. So you're seeing me in my element here. I hope you're all not getting too zoomed out. A couple exciting updates, though, in the last couple months. We had mentioned in the last few meetings of the Green Bay School District was looking at a 100% clean energy commitment. They unanimously passed a resolution on April 13th, becoming the 3rd school district in the state after Madison and Eau Claire to make a commitment. I actually think it's the strongest commitment any school district has made in Wisconsin. They're going to be creating a work group, kind of a district parallel to our commission here, and participating in our clean energy work group that some of you participate in. And yeah, they're really excited to collaborate and to begin addressing clean energy within the district. Brown County is also there's some movement there as well to make a push for a clean energy commitment. So hopefully the next couple meetings here we'll have some exciting developments there. But it sounds like there's a number of supervisors, and we even talked with the county executive a few weeks ago recently, and there seems to be some interest to continue that regional collaboration. And then Appleton also created a climate task force. I'm not entirely sure their verbiage, but kind of a similar city group to ours to look at climate change and clean energy specifically. I spoke with one of their work groups today, just a little bit about what we had done or what we have done in the last year and some of our future goals. So they're also excited to, look at in the future regionalizing our efforts when it comes to clean energy specifically. That's pretty much all I have. If there's no questions, we'll move on to item 5, which is a staff update.
I do have a question. Maybe for Cory or just on the EV chargers, which were approved by our commission and by council. And philosophically, I'm not opposed to shifting that money to solar panels instead, but procedurally, I think if those were approved by our commission and by the council, if we're putting them on hold, fine. But if we're just abandoning that project, I think we really need to revisit that and formally say that we are not doing that, because as a city, we've already formally said we will be doing that. What are other
Sure.
thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there was conversation between Celestine and myself, and, you know, she had conversations with the mayor. And so the decision was made to put the EV charger on hold for now. It's not necessarily out of the question. But so I guess that's where we're at with it at the moment, that it's on hold. I suppose we need to work towards figuring out the next steps into, you know, how can we make that happen? And that hasn't been done yet, but I can definitely work towards making that happen. So
if we think it's possible for it to happen, and like I said, philosophically, I'm not opposed to shifting that money, but if we don't think it's possible to happen, then if that's kind of what we determine, we probably should revisit it. I guess that's my 2 cents on that.
sure, and I agree with you.
Cool. Thank you for the update.
Cool. Thank you, Ned, for raising that. Are we good to move on to item 5, staff update?
Yes, we sure are.
Great. Take it away.
Okay, so number of things. Finally, we have some movement for getting the resiliency coordinator position posted. It passed personnel last night, and so it goes to council on Tuesday. Once again, the pandemic has kind of gotten in the way a little bit. Also, the Great Lakes Champions mini grant code audit, the consultant has begun her work. Her name is JB Hines. She is with Birchline Planning. Julia Nordyke has requested that JB join us for a Sustainability Commission meeting, so I will get that in her calendar for our next meeting, which is the second Wednesday in June. It will we probably will have to have an earlier meeting again in June. The other thing that I had worked on, and this is right as the pandemic was hitting, I had gone for a legislative fly-in with Clean Wisconsin to Washington, D.C. to talk to our federal delegation about legislation that would protect the Great Lakes. It was very good. It was very helpful. I would say that the group that went was from all over the state, some people from Ashland, some people from Milwaukee, some people from the western part of the state, so that was very fruitful and helpful. So grants are moving along. Positions should be posted very shortly, hopefully on Wednesday after council. We're all set with that, and that's what I have.
Excellent. Thank you, Celestine. Any questions? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item F, regular business. And we've got a discussion with possible action on developing a policy which would address the tree canopy in Green Bay. So is that, Mayor Genrich, are you presenting on that item?
Yeah, I can offer some introductory comments anyway, and then have staff chime in with their thoughts. But I'm really glad that that you all are interested in entertaining this item. As some of you might know, we made a pretty significant policy shift in our last budget, deciding to pay for our street trees, maintenance associated with street trees and planting of them to our stormwater utility. And so, you know, I think for a long time, from a scientific perspective, many people have recognized the benefit that trees provide to stormwater systems, stormwater utilities. But that's true in a financial sense now as well, that we are using stormwater utility to support those plantings. So when, you know, at that time I was doing some research about that on the financial side of things, but also on the science of it. We stumbled across the iTree program, which I know city staff is very familiar with. But it's a tool that's provided, I think, directly through the DNR that allows you to get a sense for what your tree canopy is in your community. So just looking at those numbers and looking at what has been recommended in the past, sort of what the best practices these days. There used to be sort of this standard of wanting 40% tree canopy in one's community. The experts have really kind of backed away from that as an across the board recommendation. But I just, I thought it made sense for us to take more of a strategic approach to the planting and the maintenance of trees, not just street trees, park trees as well, but trees generally in the city of Green Bay. And just doing some research recently about how other communities have handled it. I think Milwaukee still has that standard goal of getting to 40%. Unclear to me, what plan they have sort of backing that up, but that's a community that at least has a goal. Minneapolis has a little bit more of a detailed approach, and they've actually integrated it into their, comprehensive plan. And so, we are actually going into that cycle as a city of revamping our entire comprehensive plan. And so if we were wanting to go that route, of course, we'd have to talk to community and economic development and see if that would be appropriate for the document that they plan to put together. So I'm, very much agnostic about how we handle it and how it's incorporated, but I just feel like we need to think strategically or intentionally about how we're going to plant more trees in this community, not just for stormwater benefits, but obviously there are a lot of climate-related benefits to having more trees and other plantings, not just in this community, but of course across the world. So just wanted to play our part in that effort as well, and brought it to you as sustainability because I felt like that was the most appropriate place to start the conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayor Genrich. Are there any questions or, discussion on that?
Well, Julia is a co-host now, so she has some documents to share. And I think she also brought along her graduate student. Is that right, Julia?
Yes, looks like Kayla's on also.
Yes, I believe she is.
Did, I guess before I start though, I don't know, in the emails, is there city staff here too? Just to understand if there's more information coming down the way, or maybe I'm not the first person to start with, or.
Yeah, maybe Brian and or Cory could chime in with any of their thoughts.
Well, Marc and Brian are both on, and they're the forester and assistant city forester. So I think having them kind of share some information would be useful. So I'll turn it over to them.
I think Marc is still muted there. I guess, what questions do you have for us? What are you looking for?
Again, I can share some of the maps Kayla made too, with some of the analysis at least, to start a discussion about what we might be looking at, I guess.
Sure, I think that would be great. I guess just one point I wanted to make is that as far as trees within the right-of-way of the city of Green Bay, there has been some concerns about the fact that trees don't necessarily always currently don't seem to be the highest priority when developing areas within right-of-ways and that type of thing. And it's really, I think there's been a lack of coordination between utilities companies and, even departments within the city to try and accommodate better tree habitat or, conditions. So I think that's something we've been talking more about in the Parks and Forestry Department. And I think steps are being taken to try and make that better. But I do know it is definitely something that I guess is on our radar right now. So just wanted to mention that.
Hello? Can anybody hear me now?
We can hear you.
We can hear you, Brian.
Okay. Sorry about that. I thought I was unmuted before, but I wasn't.
Is he still?
Cory, in response to what you're talking about too,
So hard.
I mean, I can talk a little bit just generally. I was going to just talk a little bit about trees anyway, just really brief overview. But what you're talking about is definitely something to bring up with the code audit too. And that has a lot to do with tree protection. We know that, mature trees are the most beneficial. So preserving the current tree canopy is extremely important, especially in development projects and so forth. So I definitely think that's something to consider for a policy, but also within the codes and ordinances project too. All right, well, I don't know, is there any other information, or do you want me to just kind of jump into a little bit that I have? Anybody? This wasn't like super organized. So.
Go ahead, Julia.
All right. All right, let's see. Let me just get this. So Mayor Genrich just talked a little bit about he mentioned some of the science, but just to kind of wrap your head, for some of those who might not be as familiar with stormwater, there's a lot about, and some of them, this is going to relate to some of the maps I'm going to show you in a minute, is really, it comes down to impervious surfaces, which are just hard surfaces like concrete, sidewalks, buildings, stuff that doesn't absorb our rain and snow melt, basically. And most of the thinking over time has been, this is a diagram from the EPA. So you can see like the box here on the left is talking about like if it was just straight forest before human development came around, and how much is actually infiltrated in the ground or evapotranspirated up through the trees themselves, and then how much is runoff. So in a completely natural system, it would be like only 10% runoff. And so then you start to get into situations where we have, suburbs or even cities and things, and we get up in the area of 30 to 50% impervious surfaces, or even sometimes higher in really densely populated areas. And the runoff increases significantly rather than being infiltrated in the ground. And so that has a really big impact on water quality issues and quantity. It can also. So that's kind of like where we're coming from. So there definitely is the stormwater aspect to this, but just in general, trees in communities and cities provide so many other benefits that I think this committee is really would be interested in. These aren't really including pollution removal. So there's been research on air quality improvements and pollution removal. Also public health, just people connecting with nature and having green spaces around them. Carbon sequestration is a really big one. Cooling, so we have urban island heat impacts with all this concrete. So that's something to consider, and it can actually reduce heat cooling costs for residents. There's a really big aesthetic benefit, which is not surprisingly, and they've shown that increases property values overall, trees do, and then also actually increases business and retail customers actually coming into businesses. So there's a lot of placemaking and livability factors associated with trees. They also provide habitat, which we don't want to oversight too. So that's really important. Again, like preserving those mature trees that we have. And we do have quite a bit of trees here in some spots already, which is good. And then the last thing is that they're actually really relatively cheap compared to other stormwater or other green practices, particularly engineered practices. So there can be engineered stormwater trees that are designed to capture stormwater and treat it and filter it along our streets. However, they also could just be planted, in people's yards and so forth like that, or a brownfield or just a vacant lot. I mean, you could argue if you just go plant 20 trees, that's probably the cheapest option and might have some of the best ecological benefits you could have over time. But the trees do, a lot of the considerations when we talk about it is planting the tree and keeping it healthy until a mature stage. So we don't really start to see a lot of these benefits until they get to the mature tree stage around, and that could be like decades at this point too. When we're talking about urban street trees, I'm sure the foresters on this call can talk a lot more about that, and in making sure we have policies that allow the health of our trees to maintain over time and the root systems to be able to expand. So not investing resources in trees that and then basically having them die after 15 years because they don't have adequate root space for their roots and so forth like that. So just really overall, I think having a tree policy and actually having a goal is a really great thing, and it fits right into a green infrastructure plan overall. I'd love to see what the iTree, who's done the analysis and all the analysis with the iTree stuff. So okay, there was a problem with that. Let's see if I can pull up. Oops. Can you see my folder when I'm clicking around?
No.
No.
Okay,
You
that's good, because that means, but I will,
Yes.
I'm gonna have to, the PDF I made apparently didn't, work that great. So I will just share my screen instead. Zoom has so many options for sharing. Okay, so I wanted to start with some of the maps. So Kayla Snyder is on the call. She's UW-Madison graduate and working over the last year on helping do some analysis for our baseline and looking at green infrastructure potential analysis in here. And so I just pulled some maps from her project that might help in a little bit. Let's see. So the first one is called an impervious surface cover map. So all those hard surfaces. So the darker red areas, I'm sorry, there we go. The darker red areas have more impervious surfaces, so not super surprising. So they have the dark red or the red areas have 90 to 100% impervious surfaces. And then you can see all the way up to green, which is almost total tree cover or green cover. That could include, correct me if I'm wrong, Kayla, but like wetlands, trees, herbs, shrubs, grasslands, and so forth like that. So this one, when we presented it, got that there's some really interesting telling things about this, maybe not so super surprising, but these are areas potentially where you might want to have. And then also she crunched the numbers and she calculated that the city of Green Bay has 35.4% impervious cover, hard surfaces. So Milwaukee, we think, if we remember correctly, it was around 40%. And Milwaukee does have a goal of doubling their tree canopy, just in general. I found that somewhere. Do calculations related to how to talk about, they called them stormwater trees for the Milwaukee Green Infrastructure Plan. So it goes along much more with the stormwater aspects, but they do have, they've calculated how much they cost and how much they want per city block and so forth like that, and the impact they'll have on stormwater. In their calculations, each stormwater tree was going to capture 25 gallons. And so the mature trees are really important. They capture water in their canopy. So this is the first map she had done, and feel free to jump in and ask questions. I can always come back to a map if wanted. The next one I was going to show was the natural assets one. So this one is kind of the opposite map. The darker areas are wetlands, trees, and shrubs, and we probably know where a lot of the wetlands are. And then there is a layer over here with the flood zone, 1% flood zone, and then also any areas along creeks and rivers. But you can see this, you can kind of start to see all the natural assets that the city of Green Bay already does to be working with, and then areas where we might want to focus on. And there's definitely areas along the Fox River and then downtown. And again, it's hard to see because there's this flood, the big white patch here, and Bay Beach is quite tree covered, but because it's along the shoreline, it doesn't look as but that is that. So, that's kind of, and then the last one she did was I hope I'm going to find it. Okay, map of tree. So this one is specifically the percent tree cover on City of Green Bay park parcels. So the dark green is 75% down to the white ones that have 0 to 25%. So I guess I'll kind of like open it up to that. This map definitely, and the impervious surface one definitely intrigued people. I think for a policy, I would just encourage us to go beyond just simply city parcels and have it a city-wide tree canopy goal in general.
Can you hear me, Julia?
Yes.
Yeah, those maps would be a useful tool for us. I mean, we have a lot of all the things you've said about the benefits of trees, and we've known that for decades and have practiced that, but we don't really have the technology or the people to put us together these type of mapping tools. So getting maybe working with you and your assistant to get some of these maps that help us identify some of these areas where we could feature some tree planting projects and try to efforts in those areas as well. So I'd like to share some of that. If you could share some of that with us, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I think she can speak for herself too. I just spoke to her before this meeting, and because the COVID, she's not allowed on campus to access all her GIS computer. Yeah. So it might be put on hold for a little bit, but we do have the maps that already exist too. But I think what we'd want to do is, like the mayor referenced, kind of start to really more strategically plan out specific areas of the city too.
Right. That'd be a great tool to have.
Absolutely. How much? And then I have questions about how far the city has used iTree, because there seems like that could be some really good tools. And I mean, that's when you can kind of start to even get into diversity of trees and where you would want, where parts of the city that could improve tree species diversity too. So.
Yeah, we use the iTree. We were, I think, the first community to have it mapped by the DNR whenever, maybe about 7, 8, 9 years ago. And it did have a nice picture of the major species. So we do use it as a demonstration, but we also have a database in place as well. And I mean, we're trying to work on updating to an ArcCAD system, which we could be able to throw all this information together and more in the specific areas and kind of take a closer look at what we're doing and where. And we do get a lot of requests, of course, for tree planting, and it was up to the homeowners. 75% of our trees would be maples, so we are aware of that type of thing and trying to do our best to diversify with what we got. So, but that would help a lot too. Brian's got a lot of experience with the iTree as well, and he does a lot of the number crunching for us. So maybe he's got some thoughts on it as well.
Percentage of tree canopy we do have. That's one thing we couldn't calculate because of we didn't have access.
The iTree study that we did with the DNR, I think it was published in 2012. It's based off of our 2008 inventory is what we had at the time. And it calculated 25% canopy cover. And then it estimated about 33% of the area in the city to be impervious. So your 35% pretty much matches what they had with that.
Yeah. And that, I mean, a lot's happened in 10 years too, though. So I think I would assume with the emerald ash borer, there's a lot of trees coming. Something might be to do, maybe a next step is to reanalyze tree canopy too, as as a
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah, in respect to emerald ash borer and ash trees, in your comments about preserving tree canopy, that's exactly right. A big effort that we've been doing for the last 6 years now, I believe, is treating ash trees. And we started out in 2009, beginning of the infestation, we had about 7,200 ash trees, street trees. Our current population of ash trees is about 5,200. So, and if you look at species diversity, it was about 21% starting out. We're at about 18% right now. So actually, based on diversification recommendations, we shouldn't be that high with ash. But the treatments that we've been doing has preserved a ton of canopy cover. And we're looking to treat those trees as long as they're in the right spot and in healthy condition. I plan on treating those as long as we can. Removal wise, we remove about 300 to 400 ash trees a year. And most of those are trees that aren't deemed treatable because they're in bad locations. Some of them are getting infested. Yes, it is spreading throughout town now. But, we've been doing a pretty good effort of retaining the canopy that we can.
Is there a replacement plan in place?
We direct replace wherever we can. I think, what are we planting this May, Marc? I think we're going to hit 800 trees this spring.
And how many trees on average does the city plant a year?
Probably that many. Streets. We're also working with NEW Water.
New water, yeah.
On a tree planting grant. And so they're jumping in on it too, because they realize the benefits as well. So Andrea over at NEW, she used to be at Baycare Lakes.
Yeah, Angela Qualzick-Adrians. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's very, yes, getting those grants is a good opportunity.
So we're working with them, and she's also reached out to the whole Brown County community on this grant project as well. Everybody's on board for the whole watershed. So it's not just Green Bay, it's Green Bay plus everybody else as well. So there is a nice joint effort for recognizing and putting in trees for stormwater management.
I'm curious. Can you hear me? Or
yes.
Okay. I'm curious to know how the numbers are generated for the tree canopy as a whole. So I know, you mentioned we had a database of the trees in the parks and right of way, but how are the areas, like residential areas, determined in figuring out how much tree canopy the city has as a whole? And I guess, is that part of the equation? Is the residential trees, or is it mainly just public land? Does anybody know?
It takes into account all parcels. And I mean, Kayla, if I'm not correct, please. But it's this one particularly, she just pulled out the Green Bay Park parcels. But we could have, that's what this natural assets one is really showing. So again, it has a floodplain layer on there that makes like this part in the middle down a little bit harder to read, but you can see, for the east side, if we scroll in, it's basically, it's all the canopy.
I guess I'm curious to know how that it's determined that that's tree canopy versus vegetation, or is it a combination of both? Or I'm still unsure as to how we know those are tree areas.
Kayla?
Yeah, so the data set that I got this from, it differentiates based on, or it differentiates tree canopy shrub is one layer, and then there's a grass herbaceous layer, and then there's a wetland layer, impervious, and water layer. And so based on the different I guess, radiation that comes off of these different layers is how the sensors were able to delineate each different layer, I guess you could say. Does that make sense? So like the tree layer that I have here includes tree and shrub. So it's I guess it's not solely trees, but that's the closest I could get to it.
Okay, and then are shrubs included as part of canopy cover, or would you say not?
Are you asking me?
Well, I guess anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they're. Go ahead. Technically, in this map, they are. And I think you can see, you would probably be able to understand, though, a lot of what our tree canopy is. But the lighter areas are going to be less not actual trees, too.
You zoom out. So for a bigger shot.
To what part?
Go west. You could go west a little bit. And then right there, right in your middle, you could zoom in. You can see that's right, and you're about, I don't know if you can see, I can't see your point, but you can see where Colburn Park is, Cory. And you're familiar with that. You can see where the pool is, the ball fields, the woods, and that could kind of explain it to you what you're looking at.
Okay.
But you
is this Colburn Park?
Yeah, that's Colburn Park. And Cory's over there all the time. So just for a general idea, that's how that thing maps. So the darker the green is the trees, but you can also see the soccer field, and you can even see the diamonds where the ball fields are.
Sure.
So that's what you're looking at.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt everyone. We have another meeting that needs to start at 4:00. Unfortunately, in this virtual world, we can only have one meeting at a time. So I suggest, it seemed like, excuse me, there's a lot more conversation, excuse me, that needs to happen to this item. So I suggest, Seth, perhaps that we table this until the next meeting.
Yeah, or possibly just refer to staff, because obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be done to bring something back to the Sustainability Commission. But I think it is really important that we adopt something official as a city that keeps us on path towards a realistic goal. Cory, I don't know if you've talked with the Sustainability Commission about the planting that's going to be taking place as long as we get approval from council on Tuesday at Dan's. But I think that, that could be a way to sort of commemorate, obviously, the 100 years of the park system, but then indicate what the future hopefully will look like for us.
Yes, no, I have not shared that with the committee. I was kind of waiting until it passed through council. But the idea there is to plant 100 trees in an area of underutilized turf at Dan's Park. And then we would plant a ground cover along with that. It's to help with one of our goals as a department, which is to reduce areas of underutilized turf, but also to commemorate the Parks Department celebrating 100 years of serving the city this year. So yes, we're planning to hopefully be able to do that this fall, assuming the approvals go through. And then also there will be some sort of artistic component that's yet to be determined to go along with that as well. But yes, I agree. I think it's a neat kind of symbolic way of showing, this is kind of where we are right now and where we're looking for the future. So.
Great. I'd like bringing this to the forefront. You're the first mayor in over 25 years to even show getting this stuff out there in the public. So I appreciate your concern and realizing the importance of trees in the community.
Oh, absolutely. And thanks to you, Marc and Brian and Cory, for all your work to make this stuff happen. I think it should be a huge priority for all of us. So happy just to be part of the conversation.
Great. So is there a motion to refer to staff? Is there any other specific language needed on a motion like that?
Oh, sorry. No, there's no other language needed.
Okay.
Move it to refer it to staff. If the staff that are here feel comfortable with that.
Cool. Motion by Ned.
What would you like us to come up with?
We need a second.
I'll second.
That was seconded by Marc. Although, is there discussion before we vote?
So just to Brian's question, I think what would be beneficial is, like I said, to I think to have a conversation with community and economic development about whether or not integrating some targets into our comprehensive plan makes sense, or if there's another route that we should take that's just simply internal to the Parks Department. But if we could just have kind of a cross-department conversation about a few options, and then once staff's prepared to bring it back to the commission, that I think that'd be the way to go.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, great. Motion passes. And then we will move on to our final item of regular business. This was on the agenda, and we said we would bring it back up here at our next meeting. So discussion with possible action on taking a tour of new water facility.
The appropriate motion here is to receive and place on file.
Is there a motion to do that?
To what? I couldn't hear her.
Yeah, you kind of cut out a little bit, Celestine.
Oh, sorry. The appropriate motion is to receive and place on file, since we will not really have an understanding of when we can take that tour.
Just so everybody's aware, I just saw them post the virtual tour. They have a virtual tour now, so I can send that out, a link to that, if people are interested.
Wonderful. All right, is there a motion to receive and place on file?
So moved.
Moved by Ned. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by John. All right. All those in favor, say aye or give a thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That's been received and placed on file, and we are to adjournment. Thank you, everybody.
Wait, you need a motion, sorry.
Motion to adjourn.
By Marc, seconded by
Second.
Deb. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody.